Your environment is more powerful than your willpower. People think discipline is what shapes a life. That success comes from iron willpower, bulletproof motivation, unbreakable routines. But that's a lie. Because willpower is fragile. Motivation is temporary. And discipline collapses under the wrong conditions. The truth is far simpler and far more unsettling. Your environment is stronger than your intentions. Stronger than your habits. Stronger than your willpower. And nobody understood that truth more painfully than a man named Jonah Reeves. The man who could never stay consistent. Jonah wasn't lazy. He wasn't unmotivated. He wasn't undisciplined. He tried harder than most. He bought planners. Wrote goals. Set alarms. Downloaded habit apps. Watched productivity videos. Made morning routines. But every time he tried to improve his life, the progress slipped through his fingers. He'd work out for a week and then quit. Eat healthy for 2 days, then fall back. Start reading books, then forget about them. Try waking up early, then snooze until noon. His willpower always failed him. And he hated himself for it. One night, after breaking yet another promise to himself, Jonah sat at the edge of his bed and whispered, "Why can't I stay consistent?" It wasn't the first time he asked. But this time, he was tired of pretending he knew the answer. The night that broke his willpower, it was 11:40 p.m. Jonah sat in his cluttered bedroom, surrounded by the things that fed his worst habits: fast food wrappers, gaming controllers, dirty laundry, an unmade bed, a glowing TV playing videos on autoplay. The room smelled like takeout and stale air. He looked around and felt sick. Not because the room was messy, but because he finally understood something. The room was a reflection of his mind. A mirror of his habits. A blueprint of his failures. Jonah covered his face with his hands. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. And then a quiet voice responded from the doorway, "Then stop trying." Jonah's heart jumped. He looked up quickly. A man stood there, older, calm, dressed in a simple coat. He had an expression that was both stern and compassionate. Jonah had no idea how long the man had been standing there. Or how he even got into the apartment. Who are you?" Jonah stammered. The man stepped into the room, eyes scanning the chaos calmly. "I'm someone who understands your problem," he said. Jonah backed up slightly. "My problem? You don't even know," the man raised a hand gently. "I know more than you think." He picked up a pizza box from the floor, examining it. "You think you fail because of weak willpower," he said. "But you don't." He looked Jonah dead in the eyes. "You fail because your environment is designed for your failure." Jonah swallowed hard. What does that mean?" The man gestured around the room. "This room," he said, "is shaping you. Every day. Every minute. Every second." He pointed to the bed. "The unmade bed tells you to stay tired." He pointed at the TV. "The autoplay tells you to stay passive." He pointed at the scattered clutter. "The disorder tells you to avoid responsibility." He pointed at the takeout boxes. "The trash tells you that shortcuts are normal." Jonah felt his chest tighten. The man stepped closer. "You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your environment." The sentence landed like a punch. Jonah whispered, "So, what do I do?" For the first time, the man smiled. "You stop trying to change yourself, and you start changing everything around you." The first shift, the man knelt down, picked up a gaming controller, and set it neatly on a shelf across the room. "Look at what I just did," he said. Jonah frowned. "You just moved the controller." "Exactly." The man stood. "And now it's no longer within arm's reach." So? So now it doesn't pull you. You have to choose it, instead of defaulting to it. Jonah blinked. That's so small. The man smiled again. Yes. And that's why it works. He stepped closer. You lose discipline not because you're weak, but because your environment pulls you toward the easiest choice. He pointed to the controller again. When something is easy to access, it becomes a habit. When something is hard to reach, it becomes a decision. Jonah felt something crack open inside him. So I just move things around? The man nodded. You design your environment to support your future, not your past. The man walked to Jonah's nightstand and picked up the alarm clock. You want to wake up early? He asked. Jonah nodded. Then stop putting the alarm next to your hand. He unplugged it, walked across the room, and placed it on top of Jonah's bookshelf. When it rings, the man said, you'll have to stand up to turn it off. And once you're standing, he paused. The hardest part is already done. Jonah stared at the alarm clock, realizing how simple and brilliant the idea was. What else? He asked quietly. The man raised a brow. You're ready to learn? Jonah nodded. Good, the man said. Then let me show you the truth about habits. The habit environment loop. The man grabbed Jonah's notebook and wrote a diagram. Cue action reward. Jonah recognized it. Habit loop, he said. Wrong, the man replied. That's only half the loop. He added two more pieces, environment, cue action reward, identity. Jonah leaned closer. What does that mean? The man pointed to the first word. Environment creates cues. Cues create actions. Actions create rewards. Rewards reinforce identity. He tapped Jonah's chest. Your identity is being built by the room around you, not by your willpower. Jonah felt the weight of the truth settle in his bones. And until you change the environment, the man said, you can't change the identity. Jonah whispered, so I've been fighting the wrong battle. The man nodded slowly. Yes. You've been trying to change your will, while your environment has been changing you. He stepped toward the door. Tomorrow, he said, I'll show you the missing piece. Jonah blinked. Missing piece? Yes, the man said. The reason you always fall back into old habits, even after changing your environment. He looked Jonah straight in the eyes. And that reason is far more personal than you think. Jonah felt a shiver crawl up his spine. What do you mean? The man turned the doorknob. You'll see. And then he disappeared into the hallway, leaving Jonah alone with a truth that would forever reshape the way he saw his life, his habits, and the battle between willpower and environment. Jonah barely slept that night. Not because of anxiety, but because the stranger's words kept replaying in his mind like a quiet storm. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your environment. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing something painful. His environment wasn't just messy. It was designed for who he used to be, not who he wanted to become. That thought shook him so deeply that, without even thinking, he got out of bed at 3:47 a.m., walked to the gaming controller on the shelf, picked it up, and put it inside a drawer. It felt symbolic. Like a small declaration of war against the version of himself who always caved to convenience. He looked around the room again. Every object seemed to whisper something. The laundry pile said, ignore me. The bed said, stay tired. The snacks on the table said, take the shortcut. The clutter said, chaos is normal. Jonah whispered, not anymore. And for the first time in his life, his environment felt like the enemy. The stranger returns at exactly 9 a.m., a knock sounded at the door. Jonah opened it immediately, almost as if he'd been waiting by it. The stranger walked in, taking a slow look around. You moved things, he said. Jonah nodded. I started last night. A faint smile crossed the man's face. Good. Your environment is beginning to shift. Now it's time to shift you. Jonah frowned. I thought this was about my surroundings. It is, the stranger said. But your environment doesn't just shape your habits, it shapes your confidence. He tapped Jonah's chest. And that is the missing piece. The invisible cost of a bad environment. The stranger gestured at the cluttered bedroom. You think this room only affects your habits? Jonah shrugged. Yeah. I guess. The man shook his head. This room affects your self-image. Your belief in yourself. Your identity. He pointed to the messy desk. Every time you sit here, your brain receives a cue, I'm disorganized. He pointed to the overflowing laundry. Every time you walk past this, your brain says, I don't finish things. He pointed to the chips on the table. Every time you eat this, your brain learns, I choose comfort over progress. He turned back to Jonah. And identity drives behavior far more than willpower ever will. Jonah swallowed. So you mean, my environment has been teaching me to be the worst version of myself? The stranger nodded slowly. Yes. And you've been internalizing those lessons for years. Jonah's throat tightened. My God, he whispered. All this time. I thought I was weak. The stranger's voice softened. You're not weak. You're conditioned. A long silence followed. Then the man continued, but conditioning can be rewritten. The foundation of change, identity, environment. We're not redesigning your room, the stranger said. We're redesigning your identity. Jonah blinked. My identity? The stranger nodded. Yes. Because your environment doesn't only hold your habits, it holds your self-worth. He moved toward the desk and opened the top drawer. Inside was a pile of old projects Jonah had abandoned over the years, half-written ideas, draft sketches, fitness plans, business concepts, a book outline he never finished. The stranger picked one up. What's this? Jonah's face flushed. A novel I tried writing 3 years ago. Tried, the man repeated. He picked up another. And this? Jonah sighed. A side project. I quit after 2 weeks. And this? A budget planner. I filled out 1 page. Every abandoned attempt felt like a punch. The stranger placed the papers gently on the desk. These are not failures, he said. They're environmental scars. Jonah looked up. Scars? Yes. Every abandoned attempt becomes a piece of your identity. You begin to believe, I'm someone who doesn't finish. I lack discipline. I don't stick to routines. I can't change. Jonah felt his breath catch. That's exactly how I feel. The stranger nodded. And until we remove the environmental reminders of past failure, your mind will never believe you can succeed in the future. The cleansing. The stranger handed Jonah a box. Everything in this room that reminds you of a version of yourself you no longer want to be, he tapped the box, goes in here. Jonah hesitated. But that's everything. The stranger's expression didn't change. Then start with one thing. Jonah looked around. His eyes fell on an old calendar pinned to the wall, still stuck on a month from 2 years ago. A symbol of abandoned goals. Of broken routines. Of a man who kept waiting for the right time. He took it down slowly. This goes, he whispered. Then he picked up the old fitness plan he quit. The failed business idea. The novel outline. The budget planner. The scraps of failed habits. One by one, they filled the box. The room felt lighter. Brighter. Less suffocating. The stranger nodded approvingly. You're not erasing the past, he said. You're removing the anchors that keep dragging you back into it. The truth about willpower. The stranger sat on the bed, motioning for Jonah to sit too. You want to know why willpower always fails? He asked. Jonah nodded. Because willpower is a battle between the man you want to be and the environment that reminds you of who you used to be. He pointed around the room. No matter how strong your intentions are, if your environment reinforces the wrong identity, you will lose every time. Jonah felt the truth hit him like a weight. So what now? He asked quietly. The stranger smiled. Now, we rebuild your environment to reinforce the man you want to become. He stood. But before we do that, there is one thing you need to understand. Jonah looked up. What's that? The stranger's eyes dimmed with seriousness. You've lived in the same environment for so long, you've forgotten who put you in it. Jonah's heart skipped. What do you mean? The stranger stepped closer, voice low. Your environment didn't happen to you randomly. It was shaped by someone, long before you were old enough to shape it yourself. Jonah's breath caught. A memory flickered. A shadow. A presence. The stranger held his gaze. And tomorrow, I'll tell you who that person was. Jonah felt a cold weight settle in his chest. The stranger's final words from yesterday wouldn't leave him. Your environment didn't happen to you randomly. It was shaped by someone, long before you were old enough to shape it yourself. Jonah kept replaying it over and over, like a riddle with a truth too painful to say out loud. His mind ran through every possibility: friends, teachers, mentors, past roommates, but deep down, he already suspected the real answer. And he wasn't sure he wanted to hear it. At exactly 9 a.m., the stranger knocked again. Jonah opened the door slowly this time. The man stepped inside, looked around, and a faint, approving smile touched the edge of his mouth. You've done more work overnight than most people do in a decade, he said. Jonah nodded quietly. I had a lot I needed to let go of. The man walked deeper into the room, glancing at the now cleared desk, the organized nightstand, the neatly folded clothes. Good, he said. But today, we're going to address the environment you couldn't change. Jonah's pulse quickened. What environment is that? He asked. The stranger turned to him, eyes steady. The one you grew up in. Jonah felt his breath freeze. The environment that shaped his mindset, the stranger said. Jonah obeyed, sitting on the bed. The man pulled a chair in front of him and sat so their eyes were level. Your childhood home, he began, didn't just shape your routines. It shaped your expectations of yourself. He folded his hands. Tell me about it. Jonah looked away. It was fine. The stranger raised an eyebrow. Fine is the word people use when they're trying not to feel something. Jonah clenched his jaw. It wasn't traumatic or anything, he said. It was just loud. Loud? The stranger asked. Yes. Cluttered. Chaotic. Messy. Like nothing ever had a place. The stranger nodded slowly. And how did your parents react when you tried to do things your way? Jonah hesitated. My mom would reorganize everything I cleaned. A pause. My dad would tell me to stop fussing and just deal with it. And what happened when you tried working on anything important? The stranger asked. Jonah's voice tightened. They'd interrupt me. Ask for things. Tell me to help with chores. Turn the TV on loud. Say I was overthinking life. The stranger leaned back in his chair. There it is. Jonah frowned. There what is? The man spoke softly. Your brain associates focus with being disrupted. It associates trying with being criticized. And it associates your space with being controlled by others. Jonah's eyes widened. And your environment today, cluttered, overstimulating, filled with distractions, is simply a copy of the environment you grew up in. Jonah felt the air leave his lungs. No matter where he moved, what apartment he lived in, what job he had, he unconsciously recreated the same conditions. Comfortable chaos. Predictable disorder. A space that felt familiar even if it wasn't healthy. The stranger continued, "Your childhood environment made you believe that focus isn't safe. That effort leads to conflict. That productivity invites judgment. And that your personal space will always be invaded." He leaned in. "Of course your willpower failed. How could it survive an environment that taught you to fear your own effort?" The breaking point. Jonah's eyes filled with tears. "I never realized," he whispered. "I thought I was the problem." The stranger shook his head. "You were a product of the problem." Jonah wiped his face with the back of his hand. "So what do I do now?" The stranger smiled gently. "You rewrite the association." He stood and walked to the window. "Your brain thinks productivity equals danger. We have to teach it the opposite." Jonah sniffed. "How?" The stranger turned to him. "With exposure." The exposure ritual. The man walked to Jonah's desk, picked up a notebook, and placed it in the center. "This," he said, "is your new training ground." Jonah swallowed. "You will sit here every morning for 10 minutes. That's it?" Jonah asked. "Yes. But those 10 minutes must be distraction-free. Phone off. TV off. Door closed." Jonah frowned. "And what do I do in those 10 minutes?" "Nothing," the stranger said. Jonah blinked. "Nothing?" "Nothing," the man repeated. "Sit. Breathe. Let your brain learn that stillness isn't dangerous. Let your environment learn that it serves you now." Jonah took a deep breath, letting the idea sink in. 10 minutes, he repeated. The stranger nodded. 10 minutes of reclaiming your space. 10 minutes of reprogramming your mind. 10 minutes of breaking a lifetime of conditioning. He stepped back. And once your brain feels safe in this environment, your habits will finally have a place to grow. The missing piece of the puzzle. Jonah looked around the room again. It felt different today. Not just cleaner. Not just lighter. It felt like a blank canvas. A space that could become anything. Finally, Jonah turned to the stranger. "You said someone shaped my environment before I could choose it. You said I'd forgotten who that was." The stranger nodded. "Yes." Jonah braced himself. "Then who was it?" The stranger held Jonah's gaze. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded photo. He placed it on the desk. Jonah picked it up, and the world stopped. It was a photo of his childhood bedroom, messy, cluttered, chaotic. But standing in the background, helping Jonah clean, was a familiar figure. Not his mother. Not his father. But Jonah's breath caught. "You," he whispered. The stranger nodded softly. "Yes, Jonah. We met once before. You just didn't remember." Jonah felt his pulse thunder in his ears. "Why were you in my childhood home?" The stranger stepped closer, eyes gentle. "Because someone in your life asked me to protect the parts of you that you would forget how to protect yourself." Jonah's heart pounded. "Who?" The stranger exhaled slowly. "Your mother," he said quietly. "Before she passed, she made me promise something." Jonah's vision blurred. "My mother knew you?" The stranger nodded. "She asked me to return when you reached the point where your environment would destroy you." Jonah's knees almost gave out. He sank onto the bed. The stranger walked closer. And Jonah, he said softly, that time is now. Jonah's knees weakened beneath him. His breath hitched. His vision blurred. The photo in his hand shook. His mother. His mother had known this man? The stranger stepped forward, steady as stone. You look like her right now, he said softly. The same disbelief. The same fierce heart. Jonah swallowed hard. You knew my mom? The stranger nodded. Yes. And she knew you would struggle one day. Jonah felt the ground tilt beneath him. My mother died when I was young, Jonah whispered. How could she possibly know what I'd become? The stranger sat on the bed beside him, close enough to offer comfort, far enough to respect Jonah's space. Your mother was brilliant, he said. She understood something most people ignore: a child's environment becomes their adulthood. Even after the parent is gone. He sighed. She saw the chaos in your home. She saw how your father dismissed your attempts at order. She saw how overwhelmed you became, even as a boy. Jonah felt tears forming again. She used to tell me, the stranger continued, that you tried so hard to clean your room, but every time you did, someone undid your effort. Jonah pressed a palm against his chest, as if trying to steady his breaking heart. I remember, he whispered. I felt like nothing I did mattered. The stranger nodded. And that is the seed of your procrastination. Not laziness. Not apathy. But a belief formed long ago: my effort doesn't change anything. The sentence shattered something inside Jonah. A silence filled the room, heavy, painful, truthful. The promise she left behind. Why did she ask you to help me? Jonah whispered. The stranger took a long breath. Your mother knew her time was short. She knew she wouldn't be able to stay. Jonah's throat tightened. She worried you would grow into a man full of potential, but trapped by the environment you inherited. He reached into his coat again and pulled out a small, worn envelope. This, he said, was from her. Jonah's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single handwritten note, faded along the edges. If he ever feels stuck, if he ever forgets who he is, please remind him, Jonah was born to create order, not drown in chaos. Jonah broke. Not with loud sobs, but with silent ones, the kind that come when a truth too heavy meets a heart too full. The stranger let him cry. After a moment, Jonah asked, how did you know when to come back? The stranger smiled sadly. I didn't. But your environment did. Jonah frowned. My environment? The man nodded. When a person reaches the point where their surroundings destroy more than they support, their habits collapse. Their identity collapses. And their spirit collapses. He gestured around the room. And when that collapse becomes dangerous, I feel it. Jonah stared at him. You feel it? Yes. A pause. I felt it when your mother was dying. I felt it when you left home at 18, lost and overwhelmed. And I felt it again 2 nights ago, when you were sitting in this room at 11:40 p.m., whispering that you couldn't do it anymore. Jonah's heart pounded. You were here? The stranger nodded. I was near. Watching from the hallway. Waiting for the moment you were ready to hear the truth. The last lesson. Jonah wiped his face and sat up straighter. What truth? He asked. The stranger leaned closer. Your environment is not just the objects around you. It is the people who shaped you, the patterns you inherited, the identity you absorbed. He pointed to Jonah's chest. Your environment became your mind. And your mind became your prison. A silence hung between them. But, the man continued, that also means your mind can become your environment. And your environment can become your freedom. Jonah felt something ignite in his chest, a flicker of belief, small but real. "So, what do I do now?" he asked. The stranger stood. "You rebuild," he said. "Not just the room. Not just the habits. But the identity beneath them." He pointed to the desk. 10 minutes each morning. Then 15. Then 20. He pointed to the bed. Make it every day. It teaches your brain that order is possible. He pointed to the closet. Choose 3 outfits only. Simplicity is power. He opened Jonah's window. Light, air, calm. Let your environment breathe so you can breathe. He turned back to Jonah. But above all, you build the environment your mother wanted for you. Jonah felt tears fall again. She wanted me to succeed, he whispered. She wanted you to try, the stranger corrected gently. To believe your effort mattered. The mentor who fades Jonah looked up at the man, desperate and grateful all at once. Will you stay? He asked. The stranger smiled a smile full of love, but also finality. No. I only return when I'm needed. And Jonah, he placed a steady hand on Jonah's shoulder. You don't need me anymore. Jonah's throat tightened. How do you know? The stranger's eyes softened. Because for the first time in your life, your environment matches the man you want to become. Jonah looked around the room. He didn't see clutter. Or chaos. Or failure. He saw a beginning. A foundation. A space that held possibility. When he turned back, the stranger had stepped toward the door. Thank you, Jonah whispered. The man paused, placing a hand on the doorknob. Thank your mother, he said. I am only the echo of her love. And with that, he stepped into the hallway, the door closed behind him, and Jonah felt something inside him shift forever. Not because the stranger saved him, but because the stranger reminded him, we become the environment we create. And Jonah was finally creating his own.